Thank you. Well, let me first mention that this is the second time I'm on the program of the March of the Living. I was here 22 years ago when I was 17. And I think that experience shaped my commitment. Since then I became an attorney. And that's probably the only place where I shouldn't have to apologize for that. I'm currently a deputy mayor in one of the districts of Brussels. Well, the fight against racism and anti-Semitism is really one of the goals of my commitment. It's source of my social and political action within the university, the government, as a Jewish activist, and as an alumni of the Brussels University. Well, I want you to know that the Belgian Jewish community is taken seriously by the authorities and the government, and we've established a very respectful relation between the community and the authorities, of course, with the usual caveats, the BDS issues. By the end of the month, Ken Loach, the pro-BDS UK cinematographer, will receive an award from the Brussels University, which creates a lot of reaction within the community. That's something that is regularly happening in European countries. But what I want to mention is I want to focus on the security dimension of the relationship with the authorities. For many years, we've been perceived as beggars in terms of security. We were asking the government for more resources, more police, more presence, more physical, more means and resources for the physical protection of the Jewish community. And then we had to run our crisis plan after the attack on the Jewish Museum, which was, by the way, the first ISIS attack on the European soil in May 2014. The attack made 4 victims. But I have to say that due to the crisis plan we put it in action, the community showed strong resilience. And that's when the Rutgers team, John, Paul, and the rest of the team organized a conference on protecting targeted communities with the FBI in Washington. A few months after that was born the idea of implementing a pilot project on BCOT, building communities of trust, dialogue and cooperation with the Jewish community and the local police in Brussels. In fact, the Rutgers team was the first team with boots on the ground, coming in the field, helping us to implement the project. I have to tell you that the meetings, the preparatory meetings to the pilot project were taking place in the Great Synagogue of Brussels. And then we had the police officers, including the police commissioner, entering the building he was guarding for decades for the very first time. And from there, we took the opportunity of their visit in Belgium, in Brussels, to go to Molenbeek. Molenbeek is often described as the nest of European terrorism. It is true that in Molenbeek were born and raised many of the terrorists who led the attacks in Paris and in Belgium. But it is also true that the authorities are capable of acknowledging the reality they're facing and to accept the help of those who would be ready to try to fight seriously the violent extremism and radical Islam that appeared in that community. So, in fact, Rutgers decided to establish 2 projects. One was a workshop with the Home Affairs Ministry and the prevention departments of all the municipalities on radical Islam to exchange good practices. And American experts arrived to Brussels, including the deputy chief of the Biermann police and other experts to share those good practices. We were afraid at first that the reaction of the Belgian authorities and the local authorities would be, are you really, again, inviting the Americans to give us lessons about problems we are facing and they probably don't know? Well, this is exactly the prejudice we were facing. Because in fact, some communities in the United States have faced those issues. And the good practices have been collected already by Rutgers University. So the only thing we had to do was to put the people around the same table. The humility of the Rutgers team allowed us to create a climate of trust and confidence and to organize such an incredible event, inviting experts from the field in Belgium and in the US and some other European countries to develop a real program and that exchange, the famous exchange of good practices. But when we did that, and because we visited Molenbeek, we explained to the authorities there that there was a project of building communities of trust with the Jewish community and the Brussels police. The reaction of the Molenbeek authorities, the mayor and the prevention department was, we want to try the same program here in Molenbeek with the Muslim community. And that's exactly what we did. We've implemented the same project, the same pilot program in two very different neighborhoods. One, which is a very wealthy neighborhood where you can find museums, very touristic place, where you can find also the Great Synagogue of Brussels and the Jewish Museum, and another neighborhood, very socially problematic, Molenbeek, where those terrorists were born and raised. And we've implemented the same pilot project with the Brussels police and the Molenbeek police. Well, I have to say that we are now working on the next step. The next step would be to bring the mayor of Molenbeek to the US to exchange good practices directly with the authorities of Dearborn. And probably to train together the police and the city council, exactly on the model you are implementing it in Whitefish, Montana, actually. So again, we are not giving lessons to anybody. We are just implementing the same project. Let me tell you also that it changed drastically the relation and the perception of the Jewish community by the Belgian authorities. Suddenly, the beggars turn into potential partners, bringing experts and expertise. And as a consequence, our own knowledge as a community is taken seriously in terms of security and also in terms of resilience. And by the way, let me mention that my presence here, as yesterday I was looking for the barracks in which my grandmother has survived during the war, is a strong sign of resilience. Since then, for instance, the psychologists of the crisis, working in the crisis plan of the Jewish community are now working with the team of psychologists of the federal government in case of deploying the crisis plan of the federal government. We are considered as proper partners. I also want to mention that at the occasion of your last visit to Belgium, we had the occasion to exchange with the Federal Threat Assessment Agency, which is an independent institution in the country, counseling the government, with which the Jewish community never had any contact. And we were invited to enter the building and to establish a cooperation, collaboration with that authority. It's a tremendous evolution in the relationship we have with the authorities. Well, so basically, what is happening now, and it's getting to my conclusion, it's to change the paradigm. The European authorities in general, and specifically in Belgium, where we've established also our commission to understand the circumstances of the terrorist attack that hit the country 2 years ago. The government needs more resource to efficiently fight radical extremism and terrorism. We have to count on the local community knowledge. We have to develop a partnership that is strengthening the social bond between the communities themselves and the authorities and the police. Well, the result of the 2 pilot projects that we've launched with Rutgers in Brussels is that Jewish and Muslim communities are working with the authorities to establish those good practices and to rebuild trust and confidence. At the beginning of the process, we wouldn't have dreamed of such an achievement. And still, it's only the beginning. Rutgers, Paul Miller, and the CPR Center should be proud to have taken the very first steps that are changing the whole paradigm and ensuring mutual understanding, trust and confidence that will ensure the security of targeted communities just like mine. And because I'm the last speaker, let me tell you, John, that I want to thank you for empowering us to take action and make a real difference. Thank you.